Hello, I'm Corey Hello, and welcome to another episode of Critimation, where I review animated TV shows and films. As always, I do not own any of these films or shows. They are properties of their respected owners. Our first topic will be the wonderful world of Puss in Boots. No, not that Puss in Boots. I'm referring to the 60s anime movie by Toei Animation. The film's protagonist, Pero, who is named loosely off of the creator of the fairy tale which the film is based off of, becomes a wanted criminal by the Cat Society due to him letting a mouse go. He's befriended by a young miller named Pierre, whose brothers have cut him out of their fortune. Pierre later falls in love with the Princess Rosa, who is said to be married to an ogre who threatens to destroy the kingdom if they're not married in 3 days. With the help of some mice, Pero is able to make Pierre look more like a prince. This involves stealing clothes and gifts from the two brothers of Pierre, and convincing the subjects to say that their land belongs to Pierre. However, Pierre eventually tells the truth to Rosa, but she accepts him for who he is regardless. When the ogre finds out, he straight up kidnaps Rosa and forces her to marry him. Pierre then gives chase, followed by Pero, and 3 bounty hunters who had been chasing after Pero throughout the film. Once at the ogre's castle, Pero tricks the ogre into turning into a mouse, but the ogre catches on, chasing him and the others to a drawbridge where they are threatened unless Rosa marries him. Rosa agrees, but knocks the ogre's skull medallion, which is also the source of his life, out of his hands. Eventually, the skull comes into the possession of the bounty hunters, and Pero and the ogre constantly chase after them to get to it, while Pierre rescues Rosa. Eventually, the skull is given to Pierre, who exposes it to the sunlight, destroying the ogre. With the villain defeated, Rosa and Pierre are married, and just as Pero rides off into the sunset, the bounty hunters give chase once again. I found this film very interesting because not only is it an anime film based off a European fairy tale, but the film was among the early works of Hayao Miyazaki as an animator, before he went on to found Studio Ghibli. But I also think that the film established Toei as a powerhouse in anime, as Pero would eventually get not only 2 sequels, but also become the studio mascot, and appear in the logo at the beginning of each of their movies. While the dub voices are a little bland, I thought it was one of the better English versions of early anime. And I would recommend this movie to anyone who's into Toei animation, and not just Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon type stuff. Our next topic is the Animaniacs episode, Yes, Always. To be specific, this is the Pinky and the Brain segment, though not the typical one as they don't try to take over the world. Instead, it involves Pinky directing Brain in some recording sessions. What follows is a homage to the Orson Welles Frozen Peas outtakes, which coincidentally is how the Brain's actor, Maurice LaMarche, would warm up before doing recording for the Brain, who in turn is based off of Orson Welles himself. The segment begins in the style of a behind-the-scenes animation documentary series, the topic being voice acting. Once Pinky and the Brain arrives at the recording booth, Brain immediately fires all the staff members, who are, ironically, voiced by the same people who work on the Animaniacs show, namely the producer, writer, and director. Only the engineer is allowed to stay. What follows is the brain doing voiceover work for badly written commercials. Each one a reference to the voiceover work from the outtakes Orson Welles did, as mentioned earlier. Our brain does Orson Welles lines. Peaky and the engineer play the role of the two British directors from the outtakes. What follows is a near word-by-word recreation of the outtakes, the only major difference being the lack of swearing, as this is a family show. Eventually, Brain has had enough and threatens to leave the recording studio, only to find several lookalikes auditioning for his role. Brain eventually decides to try again, but tells Peaky they have to be done by 6, as so they can do the same thing they do every night. Try to take over the world. While not the traditional Peaky and the Brain cartoon, I found it very interesting that they would reference one of the actors' warm-up sessions. And I think it's a good behind-the-scenes look, more or less, at how the Brain voice came to be. I would totally recommend this to anyone who's interested in more of the obscure meta humor that Animaniacs is known for, as well as die-hard Peaky and the Brain fans. Our last topic will be the Powerpuff Girls episode, The Bare Facts. The episode begins with a very impressive point of view perspective shot from the mayor, meaning that we're looking at what he's seeing. After being captured by Mojo Jojo, the mayor is then blindfolded, therefore giving us a 2-minute shot of just blackness. But we can still hear the TV, and therefore this leaves the action of when the girls show up to rescue him to the imagination. I actually listened to this scene with headphones on and noticed that the audio kind of faded in and out and shifted between ears, giving me an idea of where everyone was in the scene, distance-wise. When the girls return the mayor to his office, we're still in the point of view shot, and the girls have to explain what happened. Each time one of the girls is telling a part of the story, we are given 3 different visual styles, one for each of the girls. The music style changes as well. For Bubbles, her segments had crayon drawings that were on a dramatic hold, accompanied by piano music that gave it this cute feel. Blossom's segments were more dramatic, if not self-centered in narration. And while animated in the same style as the rest of the show, the color was in various shades of pink, while the music had a heroic melody to it. As for Buttercup, her segments had a edgy rock feel, with still graphics using limited animation, with only green, black, and white as its colors. Not only do these styles add variation and experimentation to the episode, as we were in Season 1 at that point, but it really shows off the personalities of each of the girls. Bubbles being the cute one, Buttercup being more edgy and violent, and Blossom having a sense of leadership, if not egotistic, personality. But by the time we get to the end of the episode, Mayo just wants to know why they were laughing when they rescued him, and they leave without saying anything. The camera then pans out to see just what they were laughing at. I blurted just because. I think this episode will please fans of the classic Powerpuff Girls series because it really shows that the storyboard artists were willing to experiment and see what was working with the show at that point of time. And I would recommend this episode to anyone who doesn't think that animation has to be this one distinct style. Thanks for tuning in to Critimation. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter, or support me on Patreon. I'm open to suggestions, and I will see you next time.